Hello YouTube vintage stereo collectors, this is Across the Dial. I normally don't do unboxing videos, but this one was kind of special. My wife and I decided to go to a flea market, the Aberfoyle flea market near Guelph this morning. And there's a lot of stuff there, a lot of vintage stuff, a lot of Bakelite radios, different stuff. I saw some Pioneer receivers from the 70s, the stuff you see over and over again. I've got something here. I've only seen 3 examples of this in my 40-year career of repairing and restoring vintage electronics. Well, when I started they weren't vintage, but you know what I mean. And walked into one of the booths, and if you've ever been to this place, these places are sort of like a shack that they open every Sunday, and then there's some people in the parking lot. And these two are on a shelf, and I'm going to show them to you. They're very rare hot pieces of hi-fi equipment that you've never heard of. First one here, very rare brand, Marsland Engineering, made in Waterloo, Ontario, 1967. Marsland was an engineering firm. They were in the aerospace industry. They made some type of telemetry devices for the Apollo missions. They also made electronics. They're sort of the Alps Electronics of Canada. They made tuner components, modulation, that kind of stuff for telecommunications. And they went into stereo components. This is the tuner. It's an all-metal case, aluminum faceplate. This one was on top. Still has the original 60s connection cables. Just put that one there. And then sitting under it was the amp. They're not very big, they're not very heavy. In fact, they were, in their time, these are very compact components. Early Canadian solid state. Their timing was terrible. Kenwood and Sansui were starting to bring electronics into the North American market. Like the early Kenwood KA2000, the TK150, Sansui AU222, which are actually a generation ahead of these and half the price. And that's what, so these were only made very small numbers, a few hundred of each component. There's the original 60s style connection cables, and they're tailored for length. And I saw these. I've owned two of each in the last 40 years. One of them I got from my dad. My dad was originally bought a pair of these in 1967 because one of his friends knew somebody at the Marsland plant and they were selling these off. They had only been into hi-fi for about a year, then they got out of them. So I bought these as is. They're asking $130 for the pair because these are rarer than any Sansui, Kenwood, Yamaha, Harman Kardon out there. Like I say, there's very few of these around. And the interesting thing about them is most of them are in Ontario. Now I'm going to do something here. I'm just going to plug them in and see what they do. If anybody tells you you need to hook it up to a variac and bring them up slowly, that's nonsense. I was in the stereo business for years. We never did that. You plug it in and it either works or it doesn't. If it starts smoking, you shut it off and you track it down. Now you might say that doesn't make sense. It's impossible to reform capacitors of this age. But just by plugging it in and just seeing if there's any sign of life, I was told that these haven't been used in decades. So I'm just going to plug the amp in over here. If it goes up in smoke, the sliders are just behind the camera that go out on the back deck. We can open up the sliders and throw it outside so we don't set off the system. There is a phones jack. Oh, it's not too stiff. Put it on phones. Turn the volume down. And let's see what I get through the phones. There's something there. There's a little bit of hiss in each channel, a little bit of 60 Hertz hum. Nothing smoking, nothing weird happening. So this one's going to be rebuildable. It has a combination of germanium and silicon transistors. PNP germanium's on the out. It uses a transformer coupled design between the drivers and the outputs, which is very mid-60s. Like I say, the Japanese stuff that was coming in the market at the time was half the price, and they had largely eliminated that design. They're using direct coupling. So anyway, we've actually got something happening here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try the tuner. I'm not going for audio, I'm just going to see if there's any sign of life. Oh, there's an outlet on the back. Let's try that. Switch it back on. Look at that. The dial lights work in the tuner. Now that is rare. Very rare. And the dial moves. Are we on? Just put it on plain FM. Distance reception. There's no antenna on it. Oh, just for fun, let's hook up the RCAs. They're in the box here. See if we get anything. Okay, left and right. And we'll plug them in here. Oh, we'll pick the tuner. I expected these to work. This stuff was so much better built than what came later. It wasn't even funny. Turn it back on. There's hiss there. Yep. Getting some faint stations just through these headphones. So these are quite restorable. Clean them up. Might put some LEDs here, you know, see what the bulbs are like. But anyway, there's a little short tutorial. Go to acrossthedial.ca. You can see some pictures of my earlier Marslands. And if you have any questions, you can just contact through admin at acrossthedial.ca. Thanks very much for watching and listening.